Hello, I'm Paul Quigley. I teach in the history department at Virginia Tech. And for the last couple of years, I've been working with the Visualizing Virginia Tech History Group. We're faculty and students from all across the campus at Virginia Tech, all using new technologies to look into university history and present different aspects of university history in new kinds of ways. So as you can imagine, there are lots of topics to look at, lots of hidden histories, marginalized, forgotten histories. And you can go to our website at vt150.omeka.net and see kind of the range of different topics we've looked at and different technologies we've used. But today we're going to focus in particular on one project, an augmented reality, headset-based augmented reality tour of Solitude, which is the oldest building on the Virginia Tech campus. And this video clip prepared by my co-presenter, Dr. Jessica Taylor, will give you a sense of what we're actually doing with this augmented reality tour.
To mark the 150th anniversary of Virginia Tech, the Visualizing VT History team is exploring Solitude, the former plantation dating to the early 19th century that's also our oldest building on campus. We engage our fellow Hokies and visitors in the guiding question, if this place could talk, what stories could it tell? With augmented reality, visitors are learning about Native American and European contact, Solitude as a slave plantation, and finally, its role as a university building. Our methods are truly interdisciplinary, including 3D building and artifact recreations, oral history interviews, ground penetrating radar, and good old fashioned primary source research. Everything comes together in our augmented reality tour, where visitors walk in the footsteps of people who lived and worked here. As part of the University Studying Slavery initiative, technology provides new insights into this complicated past.
So I hope you'll agree that one thing we're doing is creating a really cool educational experience for people to learn about different aspects of Virginia Tech's history in new ways. But as we've gone along, we've also been thinking a lot about the wider implications of using technology for historical storytelling. And one of the first things that we realized is that augmented reality pushes us towards specific kinds of storytelling, nonlinear stories, fragmented stories. Um, and we've embraced that. We've made the most of it, even as we've been aware of the sometimes the shortcomings of augmented reality in terms of the storytelling modes that it pushes us towards. One of the really good things, though, about augmented reality is we think it's particularly suited to recovering hidden histories. So for us, the answer to that first question is definitely yes. One way to think about this is to say that AR makes explicit the implicit. It allows us to visualize buildings that have disappeared, allows us to restore them to the landscape where they used to be. It allows us to bring people's stories back into the place where they happened in various kinds of ways. So there are lots of advantages in terms of using augmented reality to uncover stories that have been forgotten. But of course, there are downsides and words of caution along with all of these advantages as well. One of the things we found is that AR has enabled us to make new connections with stakeholders in our stories. But the experience of another project, the Sweetgrass AR project, has suggested that people, teams working on this kind of project, should take care about how they're co-creating stories really with stakeholders, particularly in the context of digital capitalism. We really appreciate the ability of augmented reality to build new connections with audiences, and the audience engagement and interest and enthusiasm has been fantastic working with augmented reality. We think that helps promote informal learning. So partly it's about entertainment, partly it's about drawing people in and giving them a positive experience, but it's also about informally educating people on new perspectives in the past. And AR has been really, really effective in that way. including the way that AR encourages interaction between audience members. And this is the quotation from the New Philadelphia project on the screen. It really encourages members to see this as a collaborative educational experience that they're engaged in, and encourages them to talk more than they otherwise would, I think, about what they're experiencing and what they're learning. Place is really important too. That's the final thing I want to say in my comments. We've harnessed augmented reality to make the most of place-based learning. And so the combination of being in the place where history happened, using new technologies to bring that past back into place has been absolutely superb. And I'm going to turn things over now to my co-presenters who are going to tell you about their aspects of the project.
Hi, I'm Jessica Taylor, and I am a public historian at Virginia Tech. My role in this project was to create oral history guidelines and to track down people and interview them, and work with the team to edit and place material seamlessly into this project. Over the course of this work, I've interviewed around 25 people associated in some way with solitude, from keepers of indigenous knowledge to descendants of the enslaved to 20th century household members. Oral history fits into this project about slavery in two key ways. First, as a way to address gaps in the historical record, and second, as a source of media that connects the audience directly with stakeholders and the meaning they ascribe to historic site and content. Sites important to the histories of colonization and slavery are often poorly preserved and documented, making traditional interpretations of these places Anglo-centric and just sparse. During the interview, we worked with videographers to use portable and studio green screens. Students and faculty chose approximately 45-second to 2-minute clips in tandem with the development of the narration for the tours. Computer science students and staff then worked it into the AR experience. The videos overlaid in the AR experience provide pause from the narration and offer intimate perspectives on the material, in addition to visual movement. One narrator might provide perspective on what landholding meant to Shawnee people as the viewer takes in the landscape, for example, or another interviewee might speculate on what life was like inside of the Fraction family home where her ancestors were enslaved. The process of creating oral histories and archiving them appropriately will also provide material for the future as AR technologies evolve and research interests of future scholars or their exhibit needs arise. Oral history cannot by itself fill in the gaps of the historical record, but it can help address them upfront. What does the scarcity of information mean to people who deal with the unknowns of their own ancestry? What does this narrator want the audience to know about the contemporary issues of erasure and invisibility for Indigenous people? Oral history provides a tangible way for stakeholders to participate in the process of literally creating components of the exhibit through their own words. People directly affected by interpretation at the site were necessarily involved in the project development, providing new questions or new leads and shaping the narrative text around their interview. We attended family reunions and concerts and visited people at home to build rapport and a foundation for discussions about future directions for new exhibit material down the line. By connecting audiences directly with aspects of the intangible heritage of a site, which we know is always shifting and developing in response to contemporary social injustice and current interpretations of slavery and colonialism, we impart that interpretation of solitude and larger histories of slavery and colonialism matter to real people in 2021. I'm going to turn it over now to Emily Humes.
Hi, my name is Emily Humes. I'm a senior at Virginia Tech, and I'm one of the history students involved on the team. While working on the Solitude project, I was involved in collecting research to develop an outline for the Indigenous section. And so for this section, I worked alongside Jessica to uncover information about Indigenous people who inhabited the land in the New River Valley. We collected vocabulary and primary sources about the Monacan Indian Nation, the original stewards of this place. This also gave us an opportunity to interact with local history through reinterpretation of the Draper's Meadow Shawnee raid on early European settlers, a violent moment during the French and Indian War that precipitated the rise of slavery in the region. One of the most challenging aspects of developing this section was the lack of written source material. There were a few secondary sources that I felt were reliable, which led me to focus on primary sources of land grants, maps, and oral histories. Another useful avenue that we pursued to gain more insight about the Shawnee people was through artifact archives at the Smithsonian. The virtual archive held photographs of an iron pipe tomahawk and several pieces of jewelry, including a brooch and a bracelet. We are currently in the process of including these images in the augmented reality portion of the tour to provide our audiences with the opportunity to explore virtual artifacts that once belonged to the indigenous groups of the New River Valley. By using this technology, we will be able to display limited artifacts in a unique way that allows users to interact and engage with history. From a student perspective, I had never come across such an obstacle while obtaining research for my classes. Although it was difficult and often frustrating that I was not able to easily access the information that I needed, I felt that this opportunity was rewarding. I was not only able to strengthen my skills in research and writing, but I feel as though I developed stronger skills as a historian through creating content for the Indigenous section through a majority of primary sources and artifacts.
Hi, my name is Kenny Barnes, and I am an undergraduate student at Virginia Tech. My role in this project is as a historical researcher and an AR scriptwriter. Throughout the project, I researched the history of enslaved peoples at Solitude, trying to uncover various hidden stories through the limited amount of primary and secondary sources we have on Solitude. The main records that I used were census and military records, and with those, they helped us uncover the story of Thomas and Othello Fraction, enslaved brothers at Solitude who ended up escaping from the plantation to join the ranks of the Union Army before returning after they were free to visit their family at Solitude. And as a historian, I didn't really find the historical research to be too difficult. It was mainly just working in databases and using just name searches. But I was not overly familiar with augmented reality technology prior to working on this project. So when writing the script for the AR tour, there was a pretty steep learning curve in understanding what types of technologies were available to us and how we could use those different techniques to really tell these stories that we would like to. Through the many meetings with our interdisciplinary team, we found a lot of unique ways to integrate the various census and military records into the AR tour for users to interact with. And by doing so, our aim was really to show the major shift from census records, which obviously had enslaved people just by number, their age and gender, to the military records for Thomas and Othello Fraction, which, had their names really symbolizing the full shift from property to person that occurred with the emancipation of the enslaved following the Civil War. Currently, I'm helping to develop a handheld AR tour about the history of African American students at Virginia Tech. And just like the Solitude project, the idea of place is quite important for recounting this history. And we also just use various different technologies, such as overlaying historical photos, to really help users truly understand that the history that they're learning about took place in the very spot that they're standing. And as a historian, I really feel like that helps to create a sense of connectedness to the history and at least more ownership over it. Really helps users connect with it on a different level. And as a student who didn't have much experience with AR technology prior to this project, I was really amazed at the power of AR to really transport users to different historical time periods and different locations in really great ways. Whether it be interacting with primary sources or listening to oral histories or watching historical events replayed and recreated, AR technology allows us more than ever to be transported to a different time.
So I'm Alexandra O'Day. I just graduated with a degree in history at Virginia Tech, and I'm now pursuing my master's there. So throughout this project, I researched solitude in the 20th century, and I helped create the outline for some of the AR tour. So once the research was completed, I organized it in a way that told a story in both a narrative sense as well as to fit the physical space in which the participant would be visiting. While I was pretty unfamiliar with virtual and augmented reality prior to this, I really wanted to tell the story in a way that would integrate the history really smoothly with the technology. For example, utilizing historic photos or interactive historical documents made these kinds of resources exciting and accessible to the viewer. Also, being able to integrate oral histories and interviews into the exhibit, either through audio or video clips, is something that's super unique to augmented reality exhibits like this one. Two main things at the forefront of my mind during this process were audience and accessibility. The audience for this project is not just historians and expert researchers, but all kinds of people. Due to this being on a college campus and focusing on university history, this exhibit can draw in diverse participants from people who once attended Virginia Tech to prospective or current students to Blacksburg locals, all with different interests. This particular aspect was really important to me when working on the virtual experience because I wanted the history to be explained in a way that every participant could not just understand, but also really enjoy. By trying to show these histories in a way that any person from any discipline could easily digest, it opens the exhibit and the information up to be witnessed by countless people. One of the greatest parts of integrating modern technology with history is the ability to interest new audiences and get people excited about these topics. Due to this project being for Virginia Tech's 150th anniversary, it highlights positive aspects of our university history. However, as much as we wanted participants to be interested in the tour and the research, it was important to make sure that the undesirable histories, such as slavery, were not covered up or hidden for the sake of enjoyment. Historical accuracy is extremely important, especially when the research involves communities which have been historically underrepresented, like the ones researched for this project. Overall, I believe that through augmented and virtual reality technologies, history can be brought to life for present day people. And in order for the maximum impact to be made, the history needs to be integrated in a way that keeps the viewer in mind. This new field of historical storytelling is so valuable, and hopefully this tour of solitude will bring these histories to life in a way that hasn't been seen since the days these events happened. Thanks so much for listening. We look forward to hearing your questions and feedback.